Welcome everyone. Today I'm going to be giving my 2 Satoshis on the topic of media and censorship. Globally, we're now looking at a situation where media is largely owned by big business, and we see the giant telecoms and the giant tech companies all working hand in hand with governments to censor the internet and to inhibit free speech. Many governments globally are now essentially acting as the legislative arms of corporations, with many legislative pieces actually being written by industry lobbyists and handed over to paid politicians who often do not even know what are the contents of the bills they are passing. The deep connection between the governments, corporations, and the media should be incredibly worrying for anyone who cares about things like freedom, truth, and justice. The media has increasingly become anti-political to the detriment of society. We see things like sports, celebrities, and other distractions being presented as news. The power of the media lies in what they choose to present and what they choose not to present. As a curious example, MSNBC, over the course of the year, has covered Stormy Daniels nearly 500 times, and yet the ongoing war and humanitarian disaster, which is now bordering on a genocide happening in Yemen, has been mentioned a grand total of 0 times. And that is the power of the media. When the media is not discussing nonsense, we do see a tendency towards stories which create and reinforce a culture of division. The old divide and conquer strategy works incredibly well when you apply it against your own population. Black versus white, Muslim versus Christian, left versus right. These are all false paradigms which exist to enslave your mind. It is a dangerous society to live in, where others gloat and cheer as they watch their fellow citizens having their rights taken away. And this has been the most disturbing part of the recent Jones debacle, watching people explode in orgasmic joy at his removal, as well as senators that come out and say Orwellian-sounding things like the survival of our democracy depends on companies censoring those we disagree with. You know we are in trouble when we start hearing those kinds of comments. The double standards and the hypocrisy are difficult to fully contemplate, and when reading through comments on the topic of the Jones saga in particular on the internet, it is clear that the manipulation and brainwashing have gone so deep, and the cognitive dissonance is so prevalent that it seems we are indeed drowning within the pages of George Orwell's 1984. Where does it stop? We are looking at a creeping, oligarchic, technocratic tyranny. First, they came for Alex Jones, and I said nothing. Then they came for Jimmy Dore, and I said nothing. Then they came for me, and there was only Kim Kardashian and MSNBC left to say anything. And as we all know, those guys don't give a fuck. The wave of demonetization by YouTube was really just the beginning of this. The fact that YouTube, Facebook, etc. are the key blocks in the architecture of the internet makes being banned from them so troubling. Their corporate boardrooms have far too much power, as the companies have in effect become monopolies whose algorithms decide who can and cannot have rights. They operate in a state completely lacking any transparency. These are supposed to be our trusted third parties, but indeed we cannot trust these third parties. We are not part of their community, and fundamentally we only exist to make them more profits. These companies have become so big that they are in effect operating a public utility, but they are not being regulated as such. By the way, does anyone think that it's odd that all the major platforms banned Alex Jones on the same day? By the way, to be clear, this is not an endorsement of Alex Jones, but an endorsement of free speech, the merit of which is determined by protecting the rights of those you disagree with. The old saying goes, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will fight for your right to say it. That is an important difference to keep in mind. Not accepting the official narratives and having open debates should always be encouraged, because the government and the media, which is owned by big corporations, all have a long history of lying to you. Look it up. It's really serious. And letting them decide on who can and cannot have a voice is so deeply disturbing to a society which is a proponent of freedom. You guys remember that time that the media lied and basically laid down with and let the government spread lies about, and also to help spread the lies about, the invasion of Iraq? That lie killed hundreds of thousands of people. But it's okay. They were killed for peace and for freedom. I'm sure they felt very free with bombs raining down on them. Where were the calls to ban the Washington Post or the New York Times or CNN for incitement of violence? Because that's exactly what they were doing. They were inciting nations to enact violence on another nation. But how far down the rabbit hole can we go? Remember these lies that have been told. And when they tell you that again, certain people must have their rights taken away because they are spreading fake news, for example, take a moment back and question for yourself. If they lied about things like Iraq, what else have you been lied to about? Why did YouTube decide to remove hundreds of thousands of videos about Syria? Was that to protect your freedom? And this brings us to Julian Assange. And what was Assange's crime? Journalism. Reporting the truth. Giving people access to what was really happening. The problem is that this truth offended certain people. It offended power. It offended the media corporations who had held up the lies. It offended the administrations who had put those lies forward. It offended the military who had committed those crimes. Assange was reporting on a truth which people needed to know. And instead of mainstream media journalists actually doing something to support a fellow journalist who had reported on the truth in their lack of reporting on the truth, I have seen so many people on Fox News, for example, who are literally calling for the extrajudicial murder of Assange live on TV. But hey, I mean, that's not an incitement to violence, is it? That's okay. That's on the news. This brings us to Bitcoin and to cryptocurrencies. Many of the ideas behind Bitcoin and what it stands for represent an existential threat to the power of the big banks, the Federal Reserve, the government, and the corporations. Therefore, it is not so difficult to see a future in which media channels discussing cryptocurrency are cracked down on. But I don't want this to be a conversation just about discussing the problems and how screwed up the world might be, but actually how can we solve some of these problems facing our society? The solution is a technological one. It is not a question of needing to trust Facebook's board or trust YouTube. Let's verify. Let's make it mathematically provable. Let's have transparency. Let's institute crypto-based solutions for the future of our media, our social media, our news, and our society. And there are projects out there already working on this. And so it comes to us to support these projects, to become members of these communities, to help them build this better future. A lot of people are working on the tools for a free and fair internet. We have Nexus Earth, NKN, Elastos, Substratum, Skycoin, MadeSafe, Mainframe, Zencash. They are all working on making those tools for us that we need as a society for a free internet. An internet which is resistant to censorship. Now, a different equation is social media platforms. Right now, everyone is on Facebook and everyone is, of course, on YouTube. And hey, look, I understand the great irony of needing to deliver this message on YouTube and Facebook because that is where everyone is. If a viable alternative existed where there were actually people watching, I would happily go there, but no one's there yet. And so the message needs to be spread on the very things that crypto is trying to take down. We do have a lot of blockchain-based social media already coming up. Steemit is really just a steaming pile of crap at this point with not very many people watching, and it's a borderline pyramid scheme with all of the whales at the top really having all the benefit, and any new users, if they don't buy in, have an incredibly difficult time actually gaining any traction on Steemit. BitTube is getting better, but it is still a pain to upload videos to, but it might have some promise moving forward. Library suffers from not enough people actually using it. Minds has been around for years and is implementing blockchain solutions. However, it has really struggled to get any kind of market share after being on the market for so many years. Bitcoin Cash has the Bitcoin Cash memo. This is a new project aiming to challenge Twitter, but is still struggling for recognition like so many of these blockchain-based social media projects. We do see a few others coming as well. I know a lot of people currently are looking at EOS and really asking the question, can EOS deliver the new Facebook, the Facebook of blockchain? Because that is something that we really need to see happen. A social media platform where you are not just a passive participant, but can actually be part of the driving force behind that community. The time to act is now, and this goes so much beyond the price of these cryptocurrencies. I know we all get caught up in looking at the price on a day-to-day basis, but the technology is game-changing. But we have to support those who are actually trying to change the game, not just those who are trying to recreate the rules of the old game. We need a new game altogether. This is the only way to ensure that we do not end up in what are essentially digital cells where 2 + 2 = 5. Because the only way we can ensure a free and fair society is to have a paradigm shift to decentralized services, services which are out of the hands of elite control. A censored society is not a free one. If you actually stand for freedom, then do not stand with those doing the censoring, but instead stand with those who are creating the tools to resist censorship. For it is better to light a candle than to curse the darkness.